So then, we are back with more understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find then the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage, given to us the understanding of the time of the end, as per then Yeshayahu, the 61st chapter. We find then ourselves during the time of restoration and reduction, where the word restoration means re-establishment of what was already established in the past. So then we can understand the time of the end as per then steps of events. From the time of the 1,000 years of the seat ended in 2009, we are experiencing then lots of political changes in the world, where then whatsoever was learned during the time of the 1,000 years then is being shifted or transitioning back to what it was. What does it mean? Lots of changes in systems, countries, the way they relate with each other, and most importantly then the relationship of the first human being and Ibrahim. So then came the first son, related with trade. He would then secure a place of tradeship in the market during the time of restoration, and tabernacling, the presence of the Creator. Lots of details were given during the first and the second sons of Ibrahim, but most importantly there are the areas of trade and the area of tabernacling. So then, from the viewpoint of the Israelic lineage, we find then the Holy Creator having the first establishment of His holy tabernacling. Has to be tabernacling because it has to have the first and the second at the same time. So then, when we read Exodus, Leviticus, and we understand the areas of how the people during the time of the tabernacling they had the laws and how they would come near the Creator, we have to understand some factors of the Scripture. First, we find then the Quran. From the Quran then, when a person begins the reading of it, every time there is a relation with the second son of Ibrahim, then you branch away from, and from there then you have to expound. For instance, the first time there is Ibrahim, then there is a relation with the second son, tabernacling, then you have to have a line over there. From there then you start the Israelic. From the Israelic lineage, we learned from previous videos, related with the time of Egypt. We related during the time of Moshe and the burning bush. We related then with Aaron and so many other factors. Well, let's have this area very understandably and explained, because then when we begin to talk regarding the time of the end and the trade of the end, then we understand why those areas are taking place as per such. It's not anybody's fault. People of the earth, they have no idea how to deal with these events, but they are set in order for the autumn feast. They may think they have the liberty of making a choice. They used to during the time of the 1,000 years of the seat, though the outcome of their choices other than tabernacling would end in a place where they do not want to know. However, then, when we find ourselves during the time of restoration, those were already recorded a long time ago. So it's not fault of an individual or a group of individuals. Those are from the agenda of the Creator, and we must line up ourselves with. So then during the time of the Creator and the event with Moses, there he was, Moses in the desert. We understand the Creator did not come from heaven and touched any kind of a sand. Try to understand, neither a branch, neither a plant of any kind. He couldn't. Because people were not instructed on how to deal with his presence. So then what Moshe experienced in the desert was a vision in the form of dream. He was in search of an animal, ran away from the flock, and then was over there amongst the rocks and sand and quite far away. Then he was tired. So, as usual, as we find then in Daniel and we find then in many other prophets, they would take a nap. And then during this nap they had a dream. In the dream then he had the vision of the Creator and then a burning bush. So there was no actual fact a person being conscientious of his presence while then in a normal state. No, he was then in a dream. An area that people don't study very often regarding the soul is the inconscience. You have conscience, subconscious, and inconscience. People don't study very often. Or then there is the word knocked out of conscience. So each of those, they have a specific purpose. You can't mix them. Conscience is your understanding when you are in a normal state, when you are doing your work, you have a conscience of yourself. Subconscious is when you rest. Inconscious are those areas, for instance, of dreams that does not take voluntarily. There is a force behind showing you areas of, and then is via inconscience because it's non-voluntary. So Moshe and the prophets, a lot of them had inconscious experiences. It's not subconscious. Subconscious is when you rest. Neither out of conscience or then knocked out of conscience. Those are people sometimes that get in wrecks, either car wreck or some sort of a wreck, then they get put out for some time. So speaking of psychological understandings of the soul of yourself is then a part of yourself with the will, your power to make decisions, your emotions, in your intellect. Emotions, you know what it is. Love, anger, sentiments. Then you have the area of intellect, gathering of information. These first, second, and thirds are the components of your soul. The spirit is another area where then when you are born again, then you have to exercise it. You have to understand the scripture, place the scripture first, sometimes against your will or your power of making decisions. You have to take control of your power of making decisions and consciously making a decision to do what the scripture said to do. Sometimes it's against your will, located in your soul. So then when Moshe was on the mountain, he, via inconscience, he had this dream and then this vision and dream of the Creator coming in a burning bush. Then he had to exercise his belief. Then he went to Egypt and he met his brother Aaron and they went together. Then they rescued the people, so on and so forth, from Egypt. As we understand, Pharaoh had a set of dreams. A set of dreams only. There were no actual facts. The people came out of Egypt, and there was no going to the ocean to stretch out your hand. There was none of it. The people were not ready for the presence of the Creator in the earth. There are steps of formation. The people, they were not ready for His presence. They were extremely paganized. Any kind of a supernatural force would grant the pagan cultures of their time glory to their pagan gods rather than the Creator. They didn't know how to deal with Him at the time. Try to understand, the records were then recorded after the fact. Recorded, and recorded many times. So then they came out of Egypt through the desert. There was no column of fire coming from heaven separating the Egyptians from the Hebrews. Literary activity. Because the recordings were done after, and then they had to have oral. It was oral, from generation to generation, or from years to years, from fathers to sons. Then they began to give it in an oral form. If any moment those people not involved with events themselves, they begin to talk, then comes out other thoughts not part of it. And because they revere the Creator so much, they begin to inflate the situation. So came out of Egypt straight through. Straight through the ocean over there where the ocean was at, because the wind came during the night. They came through the situation over there. There was no stretch out their hand, the vision of ocean, none of it. Straight through. Went to the desert, and there they were. Then later, Pharaoh did realize he was deceived, but he was not deceived. If he had not sent the people out of Egypt, those plagues would have taken place. But then he felt cheated, because he had then realized he had only dreams. That's why he was able to muster the army, because Egypt was intact. Came out, and then they went through over there where they went through, but then they couldn't find them. They were far gone in the desert. They had to hide themselves in the Creator, and then they couldn't find it. When they tried to return, that's when the ocean then started to return. As they tried to go to the other side, and they got stuck. You can imagine horses in the mushy sand, and then as strong as horses are, they would break their legs, obviously. And then the people continue with their journey. Then came the first tabernacle service. The situation of people coming from there being pagans, and people came through, then were left near the mountain, and Moses went up there. Yes, he did, but it was in a dream. The people could not handle his presence, not after. You have to have the Levitical understanding first on how to handle the Creator's presence, and then later, much later, after the purification, after then the people did understand the time of seclusion, then there was only a group of people where they went up there and they had a meal with the Creator. Much later. So you don't handle the presence of the Creator as a mere fact, a column of, some sword that came down from heaven and separated Egyptians from Hebrews. And no, the world is not prepared for his presence. They have to have instructions. So when you read Leviticus, would be absolutely the first topic. Quite honestly, you should read Leviticus first after they left Egypt, because it prepares the people for the presence of the Creator. So this situation, people over there near the mountain, and then mountain shaking, and with Moshe going up there, and the sounds and so on and so forth, people were not prepared yet. It would not make any sense. Try to understand, these people were pagans from Egypt. They were paganized and scandalized for years, centuries. What kind of a God would come to their minds if they would be parted near the mountain, and then Moshe goes up in this midst of clouds, and then the mountain would be shaking if they have no idea who this person is? They would give credit to their gods. They had no idea who the Creator was. So they had to go through the entire Levitical instructions, completely, absolutely 100%. Then, only after then the understandings of the sacrifices, the animals, so on and so forth, as per the instructions. Then there were unique events. So then we understand what it takes to get at least the understanding of who the Creator is, because then later the prophet would come as then the great prophet and the Messiah. And the principles of the Messiah then were the same as the principles of the desert, obviously. So then during this time where then we are in restoration and reduction, the world then is preparing itself for the autumn feast. And the nations then coming out of 1,000 years of deceit, to where they're trying to trust each other, making deals, this, that, and the other. Those are absolutely 100% in vain. They can't make deals with each other anymore. They can come up with ideas of their own. They cannot manipulate their own system. The whole situation is then set aside, because it's not part of the agenda of the Creator. What do we find on the agenda of the Creator? Well, let's read the instructions. As we understand, the Creator does not have any agenda. But for us, to make it easier for us, since we do have an agenda, and not trying to box the Creator, we then relate to Him as the best. So, the very best has an agenda. Where do we find the instructions? What do we understand of the first contact with the Creator in Ibrahim? Trade. First, the son is going to be leader of the decisions of trade amongst the nations. Where is the most prominent place of the Ishmaelites? Arabia. You understand what to expect in the future. Second is tabernacling. 61st chapter of Yeshayahu, you understand. First city on the land of Cush. Then Zechariah taking place, as then the people that set apart go up to Jerusalem to do the pruning. Are they going to be pruning vineyards? No, they're going to be pruning the understanding of the Spirit. Because the blind state of the nation is going to be removed from them. And it's going to start from the first city. Then comes the testifiers doing the legwork for the Messiah, walking around, galang the people. And then comes the neutral system of China. In order for each nation to have an understanding of tabernacling and the first relationship with the Creator and the human being has to have a neutral system. Otherwise, you would have a credit to their own gods as then the work of their hands. Has to be neutral. The same way the people came out of Egypt, they were pagans. The same time, the restoration period, the people are coming from pagan 1,000 years. Any kind of works of themselves would give credit to their own gods. They would never recognize the Creator as being the Creator. That's why China has a neutral system. So the system CH1, as we understand, it's coming. 36 more months and we should have some very strong glimpses and evidences of it. Since we have already in the computer, then Bank of China and Citigroup linking up. What do you understand of these systems yet to come and banking? You understand credit, then you understand debit. Another section, mortgages already involved. Then you understand already there is a specialized Chinese system of finances, named SWIFT. Read in the computer. It's a very fast area where they take care of any kind of a transaction of any kind of a system. So then let's translate this to what went on in Pearl Harbor during the time of the Second World War. We did not face facts. And there is a second Pearl Harbor coming in 36 months. We are not facing facts. First fact, Bank of China and Citigroup linking up. You can understand credit via CH1. Then you have mortgage system, people working, paying their dues, and banking involved. System. Then you have the third of these specialized SWIFT from China that takes care of any kind of a transaction very fastly. Third. Then you have our monetary system already predicted by IMF a couple of years ago, stating 5 years is the maximum. You have to take care of your monetary problem. Facts. These are facts. We are not facing facts. What it would take to get ourselves prepared is instant tax deductions. Because when the system comes, any kind of a private financial institution where you can make movement of funding, then the government can get in it. Because the monetary system, after the time, 36 months, they won't be able to make a fight with it. Or at least go into court and try to find a way of deducting taxes. That's why, unfortunately, the government is going to a hole. There is this huge place over there in the Ozarks, and these 72,000 squares then building on top over there in underground, ways then for them to go into a hole like ostriches. But then if we understand the system and update the entire country's tax deductions, then when the time comes, any kind of relationship with the CH1 system is tracked. Because we are dealing then with a foreign system where you have to have exchange, money exchange. It has to be done a legal way in our own system. That's when then it's tracked. So our country has a lot of work to do because it's no longer a person that should give answers or then a group of people related with some sort of a fault. We do understand the government got religious and built this place over there in the Ozarks thinking of the time of the end. And interestingly enough, there are 12 gates in this mountain of theirs. So they had some sort of a religion mixed with it. but ended up being a piece of junk. They have worked in these burrows over there as reptiles, and that's where they are going. That's where they think where they are going. And FEMA camps and waste of money and waste of resources for no reason. As the army during the Second World War, they were then forming a team then to crack the code of the Enigma because of the combat at sea. So then the army has to take care of this problem. They have to form the best experts of computers and update the entire system for the next 36 months until it gets done 24/7 a day. When the neutral system comes, then we are prepared for. The country is not prepared. They are going to be led by China. So after these principles, then we should get busy. Please stay tuned. Much more coming up.